Maria Saj. I'm the assistant team leader in the Montclair Keller Williams office.
Perfect. All right, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I've been a licensed agent for now 10 years. Actually, this month is my 10-year anniversary of being of being in the business, and I've absolutely never thought that when I was licensed or when I first endeavored to even take the training program, that this is where my career would take me. I always thought, just like I think a lot of people think, that agents, all they do is help people buy and sell real estate and then help you occasional renter here and there. But once I was licensed and I went to a brokerage that really thought bigger, and opened up my world to so many other opportunities within the real estate industry. And so that's why I am where I am now, just having pursued that.
How long have you been in this role?
So as assistant team leader, I'm now in my third year. And again, never thought that this would be an avenue when I was first licensed, because I really just wanted the flexibility. Like most people that I think go into real estate, you have a passion for it, an interest, or definitely a curiosity about home prices, what the market is doing, why that house got that much money versus the other house that got so little money, or what people think is so little money. And, in the whole process. And so through exploring and kind of working in different areas, I came to understand that where my passion is in helping people thrive, is helping agents, whether it was on supporting a team or helping individual agents really figure out how their business is structured, helping them, giving them ideas, and referring back to the models and some of the systems that are in process and some of the things that I know that have worked from others, and helping them build their business. So that's what led me to pursue the opportunity to become an assistant team leader in the office.
Great. What about this role do you love the most?
The part that I love the most about what I'm doing now in my current role is the opportunity to be instrumental in shaping an agent's business. So not only is the consulting piece, and I think as a person, I just love to solve problems. That's just how my brain is wired. And I love to just get down and dirty and break it all down and then build it back up. And so getting really in the weeds and deep down in understanding what an agent's business looks like, what some of the challenges they're facing, as well as understanding what their successes are, because that is almost more important than understanding what the challenges are, is understanding what the successes are so that we can tap into that and keep repeating that. So that to me is my favorite part of the role, is just of seeing the changes, the positive changes that are made once we go through that consulting and sort of diving deep process. That to me is just the best thing ever. It's everything. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I face in my role is probably not a unique one. It's time management. I would think most people that are watching this right now probably are shaking their head and agreeing with me. It is the number one thing. How do you fit into the same hours that everybody else? Not only just time for being present with your family, with your own life, the passion projects that you have exist outside of work, but then within work, it's getting into deep relationship with the agents, figuring out in all of the consultations, but then having the opportunity to grow as a person as well. So within my role, am I dialing into and taking advantage of and in the conversation with so much of the learning, the mentorship, and the training and the coaching that exists for leaders of the brokerages. So am I taking advantage of that so that I can keep being the person of resource for our agents? So yeah, just dialing into and having all of those things and making time for all of those is always going to be the biggest challenges. It's also going to be it's also the challenge with making sure that I get back to everyone when there's something that they need help with, and either masterminding or brainstorming different situations.
What led you to real estate?
So my road to real estate is one of not ever thinking that this would be the seat that I was in. When my husband and I bought our first house after moving to New Jersey and traveling around the country a little bit, when we bought our first house, we felt, not at the time, I think not immediately, but a few months after we closed, we started seeing things in the house that were like, why didn't we talk about that? Or why is that broken? And so we had this conversation, and which more and more sort of led us to the feeling of being underrepresented, of really not having an advocate during the process. And we were first-time home buyers. We were Googling it. And so Google can't be wrong, right? And giving us the questions that we should be asking. Well, they weren't the right questions. And we really should have, investigated or questioned a little bit more. So that thought and that feeling of being underrepresented and not really having an advocate is what led me to wanting to take the real estate licensing course, because I thought the licensing course would be like, oh, great, next time that I do something, or that when we sell our house and buy another one, that I will know exactly what to do. Well, that wasn't the case either. And I quickly realized that no, I have to get into transactions. I have to get into the business in order to really understand the role of the agent, what the right questions are to ask, because the licensing only goes so far. So fast forward 10 years, and my husband still says to me, oh, remember when you told me how you wanted to take the real estate licensing course because you never wanted to be a real estate agent, but you just wanted to be a little bit smarter during the transaction? Yeah, look at where you are now. And that's a true story. That's exactly why I got into real estate. So a day in the life. So my day usually starts like I think most people's. I have to get my kids off to school, make sure that the homestead is what it is, and get myself out of the house into whatever my first meeting is. I really do believe that for me to be the best person that I can when I show up is that I have to have other parts of my life not, imploding. And so I do honor that sort of division of my personal time versus my work time as much as I can. And so barring any text messages and I do check the email, as soon as I get up, to kind of just figure out, remind myself of, okay, this is what today comes, this is what I have in store, what, and kind of check that against what the kids are doing or what's happening in the home life. And then, sorry. I knew that slam was coming. So, okay, I'm gonna start it. I'll start again. So, we'll have to pick a better time to do these moving forward.
Not lunchtime. Yeah, for sure.
So day in the life, I think I start my day pretty much like everybody else. I check my email and I check for text messages of anybody that needed help in the interim, or if there's any sort of schedule changes. I check my schedule to sort of see what the day has in store for me. So that way I can be prepared, and I don't necessarily start thinking about work or that part of my day prior to leaving the house, because I want to be present for what's happening with the kids and what their day is like. So that's usually, I usually roll into, depending on the typical day. I try to keep it scheduled, so I have my time blocks, I have my meetings canceled in. I think anybody who knows me even just a little bit realizes that I like to make appointments for having especially longer term discussions, because I want to be present during that time. And if I'm in the middle of something else, or my brain is on just came out of something else, of some other different thought, then sometimes it's hard for me to make that shift really quick. So if it's anything that's a long conversation, I like to schedule a time so I can make sure that I'm present, that I'm ready, and that mentally I'm right there with you, and go from there. So when the days that Mondays are always days that are just heavy, heavy meeting days. And at first I fought it because it sort of felt like I didn't have any time to do anything else. And now I embrace it. So, because I say, you know what, if you're going to schedule a meeting, let's just do it on Monday because the day's shot anyway. So that always means that there's a lot of to-dos. But most of my day is filled with learning, and so that's, whether it's learning from my co-assistant team leaders, as well as of tapping into the leadership team to figure out what's happening, what are the changes, what are some of the things that we need to be on the lookout for, whether it's me tapping into some of the growth initiatives and some of the leadership calls that KWRI has every single week, to make sure that we're kept up to date with some of the offerings that they're doing, what are some of the conversations that are being had, any changes in the industry and the markets and any of those things, so that I'm the best, and then I turn around and I can have conversations with my agents. On a weekly basis, I dial into calls to the agents to see how they're doing. I also try to respond to requests for anybody that's looking to get into the business as well, because there's always things to consider about that. And so that's really it. I'm on the phone a lot, as my kids like to say.
How has Keller Williams impacted your life or career?
So when I was first licensed, I didn't hang my license with Keller Williams. I went to a different brokerage. And that was a great experience as a new agent, because it really taught me what I should be looking for the next time around. And I don't mean that lightly, because I think we all go through processes in our life, and sometimes we think of them as mistakes, but it's really not. It's just an opportunity to really understand what it is that you're looking for, and you may not have known it. And so when I was at a different brokerage, one of the things that I felt was, I heard this phrase of, we've always done it this way, a lot, from basically everybody that I met in the office. This is how we've always done it. And I knew once I was out in the field interacting with other agents that is not how everybody always does it. So when I was looking for my next opportunity, and really to figure out where I fit in best in this industry, that's what I was looking for. It was the agency that had the people that said, wait, why are we always doing it this way? Why is this the way that it's done? And that's what I found with Keller Williams. And so that's how it's impacted my life, because right from the get-go, it was a different way of thinking. It was not why, but why not? And as on the agent side, and then just even, I think, where I am today, I don't know that that's necessarily possible, and I never would have imagined it, but through the series of the fact that they were open-minded and pushed me to think a little bit differently, and think a little bit bigger, and think a little bit more of what's right for me, and not necessarily a box to fit into. And through that self-discovery process, which I know sometimes people roll their eyes when they have to take a personality assessment, or they think of it not as something that could be instrumental in changing their perception, or the fact that we talk about mindset so much, but everything starts there. And so the fact that I was in a place that was just so open, so really encouraging, and challenged me to think bigger, to think differently, that's the biggest impact that they've had on my career. One of my favorite things about Keller Williams, or the advantages of being here, are all of the different segments and the different opportunities for an agent to explore within their business other areas that they might have an interest in. So yes, we always equate the residential real estate, but throughout your career, you might come across or might want to explore commercial. You might want to take luxury to, like, what exactly does that mean, and what are the services and opportunities that we have within that segment of or that niche business. We can talk about investing, and as an opportunity for us to grow our wealth, as well as to make sure that we can help our investor clients in the best way possible by understanding the language and the things that are important to them. So if you're a veteran, there's a military segment that is newly formed but growing, because that in and of itself there are unique needs and there are unique opportunities within that segment. Sports and entertainment is another one as well. The clientele for that really don't behave the same way that what we call, quote unquote, a traditional buyer and seller. So understanding what that kind of clientele needs so that we can then create the structure around it in order to service it is one of the unique things about Keller Williams. And that's all starts with a consultation, right? It all starts with peeling back the onion and understanding where your business is coming from and where can we dial into and where can we plug. And being with a company that has so many niche services and niche areas that you can then plug into a whole community that is open and willing to collaborate and tell you, here's what our experience has been. And that's unique because it's not necessarily a top-down thing. This is agent-to-agent conversations that say, this is what's worked for me, and this is what hasn't. And this is what I have found that has worked, or that clients in that segment or that have that particular need really are looking for.
What do you do to keep your agents motivated?
I think motivation is not something that we can teach. I don't think motivation is something that wherever you are in whatever segment of life is not something that somebody can come in and say, I'm going to get you motivated. I think that comes from within. Well, the word that I like to use is keep focused. Because when we endeavor to do anything, if you're motivated to take care of X, Y, or Z, if you're motivated because you've written down the goal, where we break down, or oftentimes where the system fails, is that we then don't have the focus. We don't have the plan, and then we don't refocus on our energies to make that goal happen. So and then frustration happens, and then abandonment, and then we internalize that, and in my opinion, we internalize that as there's a lack of motivation to make it happen. And I think there are a lot of other emotions that happen before that lack of motivation. So therefore, I personally like to go back to the drawing board. If you come at me and say, well, I'm just not motivated, or I don't know where to go, it's usually just because you don't know where to go. So let's just draw that, and let's go back to the basics. Let's come back. Let's take a look at what the activities are. Let's drill down. And chances are, when you start to do that and you drill down and you realize that big goal that you have for yourself, when you break it down into small steps, that's actually attainable. But that lack of motivation presents itself in an overwhelm. That's how we normally see it, because we feel like, well, I'm never going to get there. I'm too overwhelmed by that number, or I'm overwhelmed by what that might look like. So when we dial it back and we say, great, but let's actually put that into action steps. What does that actually mean? And oftentimes when we break it down into smaller steps, smaller chunks, then it's easier to stay focused. And there's your motivation.
What is the best advice you would give someone coming into the business?
When you're first licensed, or when you first start thinking about endeavoring into being a real estate agent or any part of the real estate industry, my best advice that I can give somebody is to ask themselves, are they entrepreneurial? Do they want to own a business, something that is there, something that rises and falls with them? And I don't take that question lightly. And it's not I'm going to fail at this if I don't, or I'm not going to succeed, or anything like that. It really isn't. All of us are wired differently. And it's not to say that real estate isn't for you, because there are so many support roles and there are so many other roles within the industry other than being an agent that you can take advantage of. So therefore, when you think about getting licensed or making real estate part of your career or a career path, my biggest advice is to understand where you fall on that spectrum. And you can still have a thriving career and a thriving business in real estate, being on the support side of it, Maybe you're really great at, marketing, or you're bringing your past experience rather than just only being a sales agent. And when you can answer that question of, am I comfortable with being an entrepreneur, and is that really where my passion lies, then the rest of it is cake. Because you will be putting in place, and you will come in with a focus to do the activities that you need to do in order to make it a successful career. And if you're thinking bigger, and you're also thinking of, well, you know what, that actually scares the bejesus out of me to be an entrepreneur, but I know that I have a lot to offer, and I have a passion for this industry, so where else would I fit in? And that self-discovery is everything to outlining a good map for the rest of your career.
Who do you think would best thrive by joining Keller Williams?
Anyone that is big picture, anyone that really understands that as a small business owner, which any licensed real estate agent in the state of New Jersey or across the country or across the world is, that's the kind of person that I think would thrive at Keller Williams. Anyone that really...
You start with anyone.
Okay. Anyone that sees the big picture, has big goals, and is career focused, and understands that this industry is so much more than just what the surface, and on the surface what it comprises of, or what the conventional wisdom is. And anyone who wants to be excellent, really excel at customer service, and really thinks outside of the box in problem solving and creative solutions to everything. There is a place, absolutely there is a place for anyone that is interested in the industry. It's having a conversation with whomever it is, whether that's a mentor, that maybe the first person that said, hey, you know what would be great for you is maybe you should think about getting a real estate license. You really like people. Maybe it's talking to that person about what their understanding of it is. Or maybe that's dialing into when you're having conversations with the brokerages or any other successful agent, or maybe it's the agent that you see whose sign is on the lawn next door to where you are, and calling them up and saying, hey, I know this is a random out of the blue question, but what's been your experience? How are you? Would you recommend it? And what would you, what would you change, and what motivated you to get into the business? It really is something that you can take it in so many different ways. It's, but that's, and partnering up with a brokerage, and I really do believe in that word, and I don't use it lightly. Partnering with the brokerage to build a business that you want to build and understand where it is that you want to go to. Let's sit down and have a consultation, because there's more than one way to do it. It's not just a streamlined process. You can take it in any direction you want.
What is your favorite TV show?
So my favorite TV show really changes. I don't want to say it changes all the time, but I love Frasier. I don't know if anybody back, and I know I'm dating myself by saying the show, but I love that show. It is just funny. I think it's actually become like sort of this cult favorite in my household. My kids have watched it. We say lines from it, and when certain situations happen that mirror what happened in the show, it's just fun. So I would say that that's probably my favorite show. I don't watch television all that often. Usually I hear about this show or that show, and I just binge watch it because I'm curious about what it is. And I'm also not the kind of person that if I start something, even if I hate it, I don't abandon it. I actually have to stick it through, because I have to understand why it is that somebody thought that was good enough to put on TV and why other people like it. But I would say that probably Frasier is my favorite TV show.
What hobbies do you have outside of work?
My hobbies are, right now, if I could spend as much time at home as I can, that feels like a hobby right now. But I like to read, I like to play tennis, I love to travel, not something that I've done a lot, but even not even outside, totally outside of the country, although that's my favorite. But even just taking day trips to different towns, different areas, and just exploring what those communities are like and what that town looks like. So just getting out of the house. We call it getting out of Dodge. So it's like, oh, what do we feel like doing today? Let's just get out of Dodge and then just pick a town and just go and just explore. So that's probably one of my favorite things to do.
What is your favorite thing, tidbit, place, anything about New Jersey?
My favorite thing about New Jersey. So I feel like Jersey is a little bit like, I lived in California for a couple of years after my husband and I were married, and before we had kids. And one of the things that I loved about California was the fact that the topography and was just so different. And you could be in the mountains, you can be in the desert, you can be at the beach, you could be, it was just so different from pockets. And I feel like New Jersey has that as well, because you can go out and, okay, you can go to High Point, and maybe that's not the same as Santa Monica Mountains, but you can have that feeling to it. You can be at the beach, you can be in sort of like farm country or like more rural areas and really feel like you're disconnected and far away from the hustle and bustle of a Hoboken or a Jersey City, and a Newark, which feels so much like a mini New York City. So, and it's access to just about everything. So you can pretty much get anything and everything that you want in Jersey. As a native New Yorker, it always was like, Jersey, but now that I'm on this side of the George Washington Bridge and on this side of the Hudson, it absolutely feels like the right place to be.